And jury two periods were less. So they had to put a system in. And it's a lot more expensive to put a system as a litigation problem than as a litigation. Your patent switch from the part where it says that's the place or only place to put it is I'm not going to buy that. Well, not everybody like me wants to find the ladder and way too insulation. They could put a pathway to up there. You have a neighbor who lives in the yard and in the basement and a lot stronger, but it does the same thing. So the electric ordinance, choose to please keep in mind to the public places that go in the basement. The other thing is that on the Autumn Creek column hunting and stuff, in the radio today talked about how the city's going to enforce the old ordinance to the firearms, shooting firearms in the city in the city limits. Our city limits exist a mile or two out of. And sometimes you can't tell here the city limits or not. It seems like it would be a better avenue if you would score that homeowner or that landowner and have them put up no money signs and not people come to the schools. Otherwise, they do get ticketed. It could be a lawsuit. Why should the city open itself to a lawsuit? This would cost them this money. One or lose.
Anybody else comments on agenda items?
I'm Bart Johnson. I'm a member of the library board. I wanted to speak to you about the budget for the library. I think you all received a letter from our president, Beth Gabriel. I hope you did. That outlined our concerns about our budget. But I will outline just a couple of things. I've been on the finance committee for several years, so I've seen the good times and I've seen the really bad times. And this is the really bad time for the library. As you know, we are dependent on property taxes. With the assessed valuation being decreased, that really drastically affects our budget. We will be coming back to you just with some specifics, but I wanted you to just be thinking about the library as you plan your city budget, and hope that you will give a little bit to the library. And I will just end with, in 2009, we bought $65,000 worth of books for the library. 2010, we bought $84,000 worth of books for the library. In 2011, 2012, and our proposed debt budget for 2013, we have budgeted 0 books for the library. So that's what it has come to. So without a little bit of help, right now we're just able to keep the doors open. And even that, we had to cut our hours. As many of you know, we're not open as long, and we are not able to maintain our building the way we would like to. So thank you for consideration of helping the library's budget.
Thank you. Any other questions or comment on agenda items?
Your Honor, members of this honorable council, we find ourselves talking about the budget once again. I would like to remind this council that the times are still tough, and that last month the state of Illinois lost 1,200 jobs, according to the Illinois website, for war notices, as more and more Illinois Americans lose faith and confidence in state government, political policies, and inept abilities to live within their means. We ask that our city live within its means, and that it not spend any more money, more than needed, and be good stewards of the people's money. I remind people of Calvin Coolidge's words, the collection of taxes, which are not absolutely required, do not be unreasonably doubt contribute to the public welfare, is only a species of legalized larceny. The wise and the correct words to follow in taxation is not to destroy those who have already secured success, but to create conditions under which everyone will have a better chance to be successful. I want the American people to be able to work less for the government and more for themselves. I want them to have the rewards of their own industry. This is the chief meaning of freedom. Until we can begin to reestablish a condition under which the earnings of the people can be kept by the people, we are bound to suffer a severe and distinct curtailment of our liberty. On the issue of the President of the United States utilizing killer drones, I remind this council that this council is our last line of defense against any form of tyranny by any foreign or domestic power. The power to kill Americans falls under Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution, under the letters of mark and reprisal, and under the powers of Congress, in order that no person have such powers to kill at will. The President is then attempting to overstep his powers, and I urge you to study the matter and oppose his overreaching power. On the Founding Fathers' side, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. A well-regulated militia composed of the people trained to arms is the best and most natural defense of a free country. James Madison wrote this in his first annals of Congress, 434, June 8, 1789. The importance of this article will scarcely be doubted by any person who has not duly reflected upon the subject. The militia is the natural defense of a free country against sudden foreign invasions, domestic insurrections, and domestic usurpation of power by rulers. It is against sound policy for a free people to keep a large military establishment and standing armies in times of peace, both for the enormous expense with which they are attended and the sound means which they afford to ambitious and unprincipled people. To subvert the government or trample upon the rights of the people. The right of the citizens to keep and bear arms has justly been considered as palladium of the liberties of a republic, since it offers a strong moral check against the assertion and arbitrary powers of rulers. And will generally, even if we are successful in the first instance, enable the people to resist and triumph over them. This was the commentary by Joseph Story, Associate Justice for the United States Supreme Court, 1833. The question then beckons as to who is the militia. George Mason wrote when the resolution of enslaving Americans was formed in Great Britain, the British Parliament was advised by an artful man who was governor of Pennsylvania to disarm the people, and that was the best, most effectual way to enslave them. But that they should not do it openly, but weaken them and let them sink gradually. I ask you, who are the militia? They consist of now the whole people, except a few public officials. But I cannot say who will be the militia of the future. If the paper on the table gets no alteration, the militia of the future, they may not take the policies of high, low, poor, and the rich. George Mason writes. Despite what the President of the United States said, former Democrats have also stated the Reformation for the Second Amendment. It was President John F. Kennedy who said by calling attention to a well-regulated militia, the security of the nation, and the right of each citizen to keep and bear arms, our founding fathers recognized the essential civilian nature of our economy. Although it is extremely unlikely that the fears of the government tyranny will give such rise to the Second Amendment, we will ever be a major danger to our nation. The amendment still remains an important declaration of our basic civilian-military relationships in which every citizen must be ready to participate in the defense of our country. For that reason, I believe in the Second Amendment. And it was Hubert Humphrey who said, certainly one of the chief guarantees of freedom under any government, no matter how popular and respected, is the right of the citizens to keep and bear arms. The right of the citizens to bear arms is just one guarantee against arbitrary government. One more safeguard against the tyranny which now appears remote in America, but which historically has proven to always be possible. Who then who then is opposing the right to bear arms. It is reported that it was Sarah Brady Chairman, Handgun Control, wrote in a letter to Senator Howard Metzenbaum, a national educator, on January 1994. Our main agenda is to have all guns banned. We must use whatever means possible. It doesn't matter if you have to distort the facts or even lie. Our task of creating a socialist America can only succeed when those who resist us have been totally disarmed. Your Honor, I am an advocate for the Second Amendment, but I also recognize that with every right comes responsibility. I then again remind all firearm owners that you too have a responsibility in assuring that your arms are secure, that you know the rules of engagement for self-defense, and you know how to operate your arm, whether it be for sport, hunting, or self-defense. Remember, the Second Amendment is not only a right of American heritage. Protect it, defend it, and utilize it wisely and responsibly. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Do we have any other citizen comments on agenda items only? Hearing none, we'll move forward. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. Roll call, please.
Colosimo?
Aye.
Milczewski?
Aye.
Spears?
Aye.
Munns?
Aye.
Funkhauser?
Aye.
Coe?
Aye.
Teeling?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye. We have 3 sets of minutes for approval. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the special city council meeting for January 15th, 2013, and the regular city council meetings for January 8th, 2013, and January 22nd, 2013, as presented. So moved.
Second.
Comments, questions, or on any of the minutes? Yes, sir.
I do. On page 3 of 4 of the January 22nd, 2013 minutes, halfway through the page, is when I was talking about the proposal to ban individuals to do business with the city, who owe money to the city. There was 2 references in here to a subsidy of an, and it says amenity or an employer of an amenity. It's actually an entity. So if we can change the 2 amenities to entities, that would be an accurate depiction of what I said. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions, corrections? Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes as corrected, please state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Bills for payment informational. What is that?
It means that voting on bills is not an agenda item any longer. The bills will be to the city council, they're there for review, and for the opportunity to question and share at any time. So that for purposes of the record, bills for payment are distributed to the city council.
Okay. Moving on to mayor's report. I'll entertain a motion to approve an ordinance approving the redevelopment agreement for the downtown Northville redevelopment project area, TCB 123 LLC, doing business as Rowdies, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute.
So moved.
Second.
Comments or questions on this one? Roll call, please.
Colosimo?
Aye.
Funkhauser?
Aye.
Milczewski?
Aye.
Teeling?
Aye.
Coe?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Munns?
Aye.
Spears?
Aye.
Okay. Next, no public works committee report, economic development committee report. Money for
I guess these are
both informational.
informational EDC 2013-09 active radon system. Radon, that's where.
So this was pushed forward out of the Economic Development Committee. believe that any of the three members were necessarily strongly in favor of this particular proposal, as it's outlined in the packet. They still wanted to push it forward to feeling of the rest of the city council. So I can turn it over to Pete and Christy if you have any questions about what we're proposing.
Generally, our area is a high radon area, so this is why we were requested to put information together on this problem and different ways we could use to control it better in our new constructed homes. Obviously, this information applies to all homes in Yorkville, but it is more particularly to new constructed homes. We don't have the ability or jurisdiction to go in and mandate retrofits on this, but this would be just for new homes only.
So the specific proposal, if you were in favor of it, we would actually take it back to EDC, draft an ordinance with different parameters on how it applied to new construction, and then we'd be looking for it to be approved at that point. So I think we just wanted to get direction from the entire city council whether you were in favor of such an ordinance.
For Mark, maybe Jim, how many percent of builders do it anyway? Because I don't think we ever had that in Yorkville. I know the house I bought new back in '99 and several other houses, and then I see the radon piping in there. Isn't that a competitive advantage if you're trying to sell a house?
Yes, it is. Right now, we currently require a passive system, which is just the piping to be installed. We don't require the active, and right now I don't believe anywhere in Illinois does require an active system to be installed, but every new home that's built has a radon reduction system, but it's simply the passive variety. It doesn't do the slab decompression and basically remove all the gases from underneath the home and exhaust them out into the atmosphere above the home.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on EDC and I asked this be brought out. I personally am not in favor of it. I understand that the only difference between an active and a passive system is the fan, which is about a $300 upgrade if you build a house. If you don't do it and then you go to sell your house and you have radon and you have to do a mitigation system, it can run you north of $1,000. So from a cost-benefit analysis, I understand that it makes complete sense to have an active radon system. However, I'm also of the opinion that sometimes good government is less government. There's really no need for us to mandate this. It's an individual choice to each individual builder, and if they want to, you're building a house, you want an active system, ask for it, pay the $300, you have an active system. And if you don't, you're taking the gamble that when you go sell your house, you might have to mitigate it and put in a $1,000 system. That's up to you. I really don't see any need for the city council to mandate that we do this. It's out there, it's an option. If people want to do it, they can do it. So I would be voting against it if it came forward.
I disagree with you, Carl. I just think that an active system in all the new homes that are constructed would be beneficial to all the people, all the residents that are purchasing these homes, and I'd like to see Yorkville be proactive on something like this. At a cost of $300, we've been cutting fees for builders for quite a while, and I don't think $300 is really going to break the bank for them. And I think it's going to be a public safety issue for the residents, the people that are buying new homes. And I certainly, they may hear that they have a radon system in their home. The builder can use that as a selling point. However, it's a passive reduction system. It's not the active radon system that I think is so important. And I think that Yorkville should just be proactive on this particular, the radon system, and go forth with it.
I did, but I was just going to ask, did you say, Christy, that this may eventually require codes?
Yeah. My understanding is, in speaking to people that work with us on a regular basis, is the reason why it's not a mandated to be an active system, statewide or even nationwide with our international codes, is because of it depends on the area you're on, the type of soil you're on, it depends on your radon levels. For example, if you saw our map, we're in a very bad area. And that, my understanding, talking to a gentleman with the state of Illinois, said it's
state is set up geologically. That's where the glacier went through it, dug a deep path, left a lot of gravel and sand. So you end up with a lot of radon in those areas. And if they were to mandate it nationwide, it really wouldn't have any effect, say, in Idaho, because there is no radon, but there is in our area. So that's why it's not a nationwide mandate. Now, the state of Illinois might take it upon themselves to mandate it at some point in time, but as of right now, they don't have any plans.
And just a question. Just because you don't have radon when you have your house built, that can develop over time, is that correct?
Yes. Basically, during the construction process, the best time to test your house for radon, if you're looking for the best possible result, is immediately after construction, because at that point in time, the ground has enough chance to build up, basically a negative pressure under your slab of the home. And when it builds up, that's when you see the gas be emitted in your house, and your house starts holding it in areas like your unfinished basement or unfinished space. So, yeah, you generally don't have that problem unless you live in the house for a little while.
And this proposal here is strictly for new construction. What about homes that have, like my house is 90 years old. I've probably never had it tested. Is this something we need to educate people about? Is that a concern in the older parts of town, or can it happen anywhere?
It is a concern, but the accumulation of the radon gas is actually is somewhat mitigated by the older homes' lack of better word, tightness of the home. New homes are constructed with such a standard like the energy code that basically you're eliminating the ability for outside air to enter the home and inside air to exit the home because you open windows and doors. With the new 2012 energy code, it mandates a blower door test on every new home built, which basically they set up they shut all the windows, shut all the doors, and they set up a giant fan on there, and they see how much air they can suck through the home. And if it exceeds a certain level, then your house fails and you have to go through and tear it all apart and redo it. So with it being energy conscious, we start making homes tighter and tighter, nothing breathes, and then you don't actually lose any radon gas. So yes, there is a danger of it in older homes, but it's mitigated somewhat by the fact that there is air movement.
Any other questions? What are you looking for, Bart? I mean, as far as, you want a consensus to go forward?
Should be direction to draft an ordinance or not?
So now we go around the table and see if they should continue with the ordinance, or it's something that we should be regulated.
My first instinct is no. I think that they should have an option if they want to do it. I think it's a good idea. I'd probably do it, but I just don't think they need to be mandated.
I'm for, I think, like Carl said, less government. I think there's ways of bringing that into the process, so when builders come to build a house, that they could do something that, suggested wise.
I'm actually for it. I think the cost is fairly minimum when you consider what a house goes for nowadays, and I'm all for the making sure our residents are safe. I think we should move ahead.
Yeah, I kind of agree with kind of where we draw the line at governing people. I would like to get more information given to builders and recommend that they seriously do that, and just from a competitive standpoint. But I mean, most people would see that radon too, you take your house and get done it, but this is not really. But it makes you feel better if they write radon on the pipes. So I understand that's pretty
Close?
I'm definitely in favor of it, and as far as leaving it up to the builders or developers, if you think back, we left the SSA situation up to the builders and developers, and that is just the worst disaster that the city has ever seen. And if it's $300, the cost is around $300, I certainly think that they can afford it. And again, to trust them to educate the people that are the new home buyers, I'm not real sure that I would put a lot of faith in that, because they, again, are the ones that push the SSA. So I would like to see the city put this in our codes.
Carla?
Well, I think Pete said it best when he says no municipality in the state requires it. I mean, why are we first? Obviously, I don't support it. I think less government, more government.
Chris?
I won't support it, but like it's been said, less government, give it as an option for their residents, let them do it on their own.
I'll need your input, Jackie, but we'll be able to hear it.
I think it's a good idea cost-wise, but then we're putting another burden on builders, and we're trying to attract builders, and now we're just putting something else on them to do just in our area on houses. So for that, I probably would not support it.
That's 6-2, not to regulate it. The saving grace here is that I'm sure the state's going to do it eventually. There's some support, the state's going to do it.
When Big Brother says we have to do it, that's what we have to do it.
Exactly. Okay, no further action required on that. There's one other informational item on there. Southside Residential Development Incentive Program.
Well, you're the mayor. EDC 2013-10, Southside Residential Development Incentive Program. This is discussed as a kind of bill program for taking another step further. The bill programs work fairly well, so we decided to get information out to help spur areas that are growing.
There's some good ideas in here. I mean, there's a good discussion, so any comments or questions or anything you want to throw out there, Larry?
Yeah, first of all, I appreciate the fact that we're moving quickly on this matter. I do have a question on proposal number 4, where the committee agreed to waive one building permit fee for every 10 lots in a subdivision. How'd you come up with that equation, just out of curiosity?
I pulled the number out of a hat. No, it was an example that I used. I said one of the things that the builders were interested in was building a spec home. And so they think that by building the spec home, they can show their product and possibly build a few more. It's not going to be the days of they own 300 lots anymore. It's going to be the days of maybe they own 5, 6, 7 lots, and they want a spec home to demonstrate their product. So I came up with the idea, and that's why we brought it here. Maybe the number's higher, maybe the number's lower. But as an example, if a builder buys 10 lots, that gets rid of problem number 1 of these lots that pretty much are orphaned, for a better term. Nobody's caring for them, nobody's paying the assessments, nobody's paying the taxes, nobody's doing anything. So now you have a builder who comes in, buys 10 lots, and is now taking care of these 10 lots, so that takes care of that problem. Is paying the SSAs for those lots, it takes care of that problem, and is looking from a financial standpoint to gain, to build on the lot so they can make their money, so they have the incentive to build. So in exchange for that, if they agree to buy 5, 10, 15 lots, whatever it is that we decide, we would waive liens that we have regarding like the mowing liens, not the SSA liens or the tax liens or anything of that nature. We don't have the authority to do that to begin with, and we shouldn't. And we would offer them the permits for one spec home so they can build their spec home and hopefully to stimulate the development of the other 9 lots that they purchased. That was kind of the framework of the proposal we brought up, and we wanted to bring it out here to you guys as a whole to see if this had legs or if everybody thinks it's a horrible idea or whatever you think.
Actually, I look at these 4 proposals, and I think they're all good. As a matter of fact, I think number 1 and 2 we should be doing anyways, regardless of the situation on the south end of town. I'd like to see us move ahead with this. I'd like to see staff look at that number, though, to see if that's cost effective, if maybe we can move it one way, maybe a little bit lower, a little more of an incentive for a builder to get in there and develop.
I know that we had talked when we implemented the build program about waiving fees outright for model homes and spec homes. So, under that proposal that was discussed at the time, you tell the builder if you can build a home, keep it up to date, obviously make the property tax payments on it, and when somebody buys it, they still have to get a certificate of occupancy from us. So at that point, we've got a natural kind of, processed for the building permit fees to be paid, and then for any incentives that we're providing to be given to the homeowner. So, to me, it would be reasonable to say, a certain number of spec homes or model homes we can waive, but you just have to pay the fee, when you have to certificate of occupancy. I guess even to capitalize on the idea of a buyer having 10 lots and getting one free is if you have somebody existing in town. Maybe it's for every 10 lots that they already own, that they're paying the SSA, the property taxes, and they're maintaining it. Why would we give them one? So.
Another item I didn't see on here, but talking with the people in Wendett, I know especially, they gave some interest in if the lots next to their houses were graded a little bit, that they might at least upkeep, mow the grass and do that kind of stuff. I didn't see that in here, and I think that might be a nice thing to look into for maintenance costs.
I have a question, just as a point of clarification. This is citywide, correct? Not just Southside residential?
Well, I proposed it as a south side residential because I think there's a lot of development on the north side, and being a Ward 1 alderman, I think that the south side is being neglected. So when I propose it as limited to the south end of town where there really doesn't seem to be a lot of growth. Now, if you guys want to make it citywide, that's up to you. But when I presented it, it was a stimulus idea for the south end of town to try to develop down there. I know you don't like that idea.
No, it's going to be citywide or nothing.
Well, you can't blame me for trying, but that's how I proposed it for the south end of town, which needs a little.
Well, we can't punish the north side just because they're growing and
North side's doing
they are. And we want to continue to have that happen.
I do.
The south side's coming around. There's been a lot of activity, fountains filled up. There's some good things coming to the south side.
I think that the fifth thing that I couldn't come up with an idea, so I think I wanted to present to you guys to see if any of you can come up with something that maybe we can propose at a later meeting is. Also, I mean, we're concentrating on building new homes. We have a lot of inventory. I still haven't really been able to think of an idea as an incentive or something to do to try to move either individuals who own homes who need to relocate for whatever reason and are having trouble selling, foreclosed homes that are just sitting empty. I mean, those homes we can't neglect either. I just can't really formulate a plan in my mind to try to come up with something. So, I mean, if staff or anybody has any suggestions, I'm more than happy to hear it.
Yeah, we've talked about it many times.
That's a hard one.
It's a hard one. Okay, anyone else on this? So what are we looking to, have staff kind of more formalize this and bring it back and?
Yeah, some of the proposals are going to require maybe a formal policy to be adopted by the city council. Some of them, it just helps, for you to talk about it and endorsed it. That way, Lynn and I can go back and, talk about it at the different trade shows and talk about it with industry people. So, kind of both angles, formally and informally, we'll carry on.
Okay, so we'll be discussing this again in the near future.
Can I ask one more question?
Of course you may.
What is the exact amount of the building permit fees?
Yeah, it depends on the subdivision. It can be anywhere from, I think there's a couple subdivisions that are still in the $7,000 or $8,000 range. Some of them are 25, 26. It depends on how much land they gave us for parks, schools, if they upfronted any fees. It's all over the board.
Or if they have a fee lock.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Or if they have a fee lock in place, some developments are set at fees that were back 10 years ago, while others have expired and current fees are with them.
Okay, we have no public safety committee report, no admin report, anything from park board, no plan commission. ZBA, no city council report, city clerk's report, no city treasurer's report, any community and liaison reports. Staff reports? Okay, we are going to go into fiscal year 2014 budget presentation. Here's the first of the budget presentations. The budget's going to present some of the big picture items today, and next meeting some of the smaller picture items, and then we'll have, about 3 meetings for discussion. And then yours, Bert.
There should be a little receptor.
Technical difficulties?
Yeah, again, 2 in a row, it's not good. So my pointer, which worked this morning at the chamber, so Jeff's going to go grab my wireless mouse to see if I can still use the podium, and if not, I will be rolling.
It's not really your presentation then.
It is. I'm going to have to cut out some slides, probably. Probably going to be in my budget, is my guess. Okay, so like Barry said, we do have a couple meetings to discuss the budget. We've got 2 presentations in the city council scheduled tonight, 2 weeks from now. One mandated public hearing by state statute, that's going to be on March 12th, 2013. There is a possibility that we could discuss the budget that night. In addition, we've got the second meeting in March and then 2 in April before we have to approve it on April 30th, 2013. So tonight's schedule, I'm actually going to go over the budget narrative memo. I'm going to talk about the big picture, what we changed from last year, a year-by-year overview, and then items to note. So this is actually going to mimic, you're going to be able to follow along with it in the budget memo. Next meeting, we are going to talk about the small picture, items in the general fund, and all the rest of the funds. And then what I actually do, I give you the overview, I point out the things that we're talking about tonight, and you can see it actually in the budget. So, yeah, as soon as my wireless mouse comes in, I'll roll around here.
You can move your chairs too if you need a better view.
Just a reminder, the City Council does only actually approve the fiscal year 14 budget, and that stretches from May 1st of 2013 through April 30th of 2014. And then fiscal year 15 and beyond, really we're using that as a planning administration tool. So, in general, how do things look? Well, pretty good now, but less so later. So that was the same story last year. So let's get into the individual graphs. So this is just our general fund, year by year in this budget proposal, and then our consolidated budget surplus, or deficit. And this is a little bit of a change from what we did last year. We talked about cash flow, cash position. The consolidated budget surplus and deficit is all of your funds added together with simple math like you would a household budget, so that you can see what the city is spending between capital, parks and recreation, water, sewer. It's really kind of a catch-all calculation of bank account. It doesn't include anything having to do with parks and recreation. Doesn't include anything having to do with library because they control their own expenses and revenues. So this is the first year that we've done kind of this and titled it Consolidated Budget. So as you can see, again, we're in fiscal year 13. These are our current projections, doing pretty good. So you take those individual fund surplus and deficits, and you add them all together, and you get what would be your bank account balance. So again, this has nothing to do with Parks and Recreation, doesn't have anything to do with library. In fiscal year 13, we are projecting to be just about $10 million in our total consolidated fund balance. Rob would make sure that we know that water and sewer is not actual cash on hand, it's fund balance equivalency, which takes into account everything from receivables to...
Which is current assets, what's current liabilities. You don't count any long-term assets and long-term liabilities.
Okay. So the blue is the consolidated fund balance of all the funds. The red is going to be our general fund balance. So we are projecting to stay above $2 million in general fund balance all through fiscal year 18. And that fiscal year 18 figure, when we get into, dips just below our fund balance policy of 15%. So here is a comparison between last year and its proposal and this year's proposal. So, and there's a slide that breaks these out individually. If you look at the blue and the green, so the blue is going to be your current year general fund surplus deficits, and then the green is last year's surplus and deficit. You can see where we've been from last year to this year. So some of the years are a little better in the blue. In the green, last year we were a little bit better off. Again, we'll get into the individual year by year. Our consolidated budget, again, that's all of our budgets kind of added together. Again, spikes in the red, which is our current, and that's primarily caused by actually Game Farm Road. We've got a large influx of bond proceeds in fiscal year 15, and then we're spending in fiscal year 16. But in fiscal year 17, we're almost right where we were proposing last year. So, you know, we end up going a lot of different places, but we're not really making the budget any worse off than we did last year. So how do things look from a fund balance perspective? Again, you're going to be looking at the top, blue and green. Blue is this year, green is last year. So actually from a consolidated fund balance perspective, we're doing a lot better. And then from just your general fund balance, you know, the red here is what's in the current budget, and then the purple is what we showed last year. So we have improved, or we're proposing to improve our position from last year just based on the proposals that we've got in here. Now I'm going to take a moment and see if this works. That will speed everything up. That there is. And what this work. Okay, so I'll be stationed here. So I apologize to anybody standing behind me. Okay, so the big picture, throughout all of our funds, it's important to remember, we have a city policy that says fund balance should be between 15 and 25% of your general fund. We're going to match that each year through fiscal year 17 and dip below it in fiscal year 18. Our consolidated fund balance, which means everything added together again, is better off over the next 5 years than it was last year. So revenue growth projections have not changed. We're still proposing almost no growth in revenues over the next 5 years, sales tax, income taxes. But we do have infrastructure fees on the utility bill, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. We are restricting personnel additions. We've got no new police officers scheduled for the next 5 years. We do have not a hiring freeze, so if somebody leaves, we would propose to refill them, but no new hires. And then we are talking about total cuts of certain city services. So, all right, just to start off, what did we change? Well, last year, we talked about the easy years, first 2 years, and we talked about hard years. Well, what we're doing this year is we're comparing what we proposed last year to this year, each year. We've got fund consolidation, so we shrunk a couple of our capital funds into a vehicle and equipment fund. And then when I talked about our consolidated fund balances, our operational funds are trued up, which means you can actually go through, do the simple math for each fund, and you can see how much we're taking in versus how much we're spending across all the funds. So that has some practical analysis purposes, obviously. So fiscal year 13, much better than we had expected. You know, we budgeted for about $930,000 surplus. We think we're going to be at $2.3 million, which is huge. So we got there through conservative revenue projections, controlling expenses. Every department, again, is under budget this year, or is projected to be under budget. From our audit, if you remember last year, every department in the city was under budget. Projecting the fund balance at 31%, which is crazy. That's 6% higher than our highest fee fund, which impacts the general fund, I'll get into it in a second, does not impact the overall consolidated budget. But on the bright side, our revenues, again, are a lot better than we expected. We do have service cuts proposed in fiscal year 14. We're talking about cutting middle area transit completely for reasons we'll get into, leaf pickup completely, and we're talking about rolling back the senior driver subsidy over 3 years. So it'll be a partial rollback over 2 years and complete elimination 3 years out. On the bright side, again, we do have $1 million for roads. That requires a road infrastructure fee to be passed. Again, we'll get into that. And then our overall consolidated budget in fiscal year 14 is going to be a lot worse than we projected last year, but that's really because we're paying out countryside TIP funds, which I think we can all agree is a good problem to have. We were projecting last year that we were going to have problems with cash flow in the future and making those bond payments in fiscal year 19 beyond the fund proceeds go out. So again, the municipal building impact fee fund closure doesn't have an impact on your overall consolidated budget, because when you add the transfer out of the general fund into the municipal building impact fee fund and close it out, that's completely offset by the municipal building impact fee catching that revenue and then depositing it into its fund. So there's a counter action to that transfer in, which has no net impact on the consolidated budget. So moving to fiscal year 15, a lot better than we had projected last year. The main reason is because of the road infrastructure fee. Although we're not proposing to deposit those fees into the general fund, what it does is it deposits directly into the citywide fund, and then the general fund does not have to deposit money into the citywide fund for all these other things. So the the general fund is really impacted directly by the imposition of that road infrastructure fee. Again, conservative revenue projections, we're not proposing any growth, so those are starting to come to fruition. Each year that we get higher revenue numbers, we're going through and we're resetting the next 5 years. So when sales taxes are $2.4 million last year, and we had projected that for 5 years going forward, and it shows up at 2.5, we edit that so it's $2.5 million each year going forward. So we are recalibrating it each year. All the service cuts we discussed in fiscal year 15 now have a full year of value in there. So, leaf pickup, CAT, all those other things. Again, conservative expense projections too. We've been pretty good with overestimating health insurance costs, which doesn't sound that great, but you have to realize that for 3 years in a row, I think fiscal year 7 to 9, we had projected 15% increases in health insurance, and they ended up being 27 and 35, and another one was 20. So the fact that we were able to estimate a 10% increase and it came in at 7% is a big deal. Health insurance for elected officials, we rolled that back. Legal fees have been a lot lower. Kathy's been doing a little bit less work. She's been a lot more efficient. Not that she wasn't efficient. New and higher expenses that offset some of those good things. Again, rec center closure. There are still expenses in fiscal year 15. We've still got a property tax payment. We've got a couple other things that we actually budgeted for in the 79 Parks and Recreation budget. So those still impact the general fund because we transfer money into those funds from the general fund. We've got some vehicle replacements, some salary line item increases related to basically how we budget. Now we assume that each employee in the city is going to cash out 40 hours of sick time and 40 hours of vacation time each year. So we've got an additional 80 hours of compensation for each employee because they're entitled to do that by the employee manual. So we assume that everybody's going to do it, and not everybody does, and then whatever they don't cash out is a savings to the city for that individual year. So again, we've got another $1 million for roads. We start Game Farm Road expansion, and we do propose to complete it via borrowing. So there are going to be a bond that we're going to talk about in fiscal year 15-16. We've got the city share of Route 34 expansion. That's one of those IDOT letters of understanding that we talked about a couple of years ago. That's funded in this budget. So from a consolidated budget surplus perspective, fiscal year 15, a lot better than we had expected, but really that's because we have $4.5 million of Game Farm Road proceeds. So if you back those out, we're actually looking at a consolidated deficit of $1 million. So we are drawing down our overall fund balance by a little bit in fiscal year 15. 16, again, we projected massive deficits in the general fund, and then that has turned around. Now we have a $500,000 surplus is what we're projecting. Again, that's because of conservative revenue projections in your road infrastructure fee. Again, that's indirectly deposited somewhere else. The general fund does not have to make up that expense now, so it frees up money to do other things. You've got the first full year of the senior garbage subsidy being eliminated. Again, we've got no police officers hired through fiscal year 18, and then we've got increased costs for squad cars, IT, and engineering in there. So hopefully those don't come to fruition, and we're able to save money there too. Game Farm Road construction we got in there is completely being paid off and completed in fiscal year 16, and then we're talking about the start of Cannonball Road resurfacing. So a stretch between Blackberry Shore Lane and the Manga Lane, roughly near Autumn Creek. We've got a $300,000 grant in federal funds to complete that, so we did fund that. Again, we've got Route 71 expansion between 47 and Orchard Road. That's another IDOT letter of understanding we approved a couple years ago. That's funded in fiscal year 16. From an overall budget perspective in 16, a lot worse than we had projected last year. But again, that's because we took in all of our bond proceeds in fiscal year 15 for Game Farm Road. We're spending them in fiscal year 16. And so when you pull those out, we're really only looking at about an $800,000 deficit. So still not in surplus, obviously, but not as bad as it would just show on its face. Fiscal year 17 and 18, again, those are 4 and 5 years away. We talked about this last year. Those are going to be really variable, highly speculative. So we just kind of lumped them together and did a mini analysis here. We are projecting deficits each year again. The main reason for those deficits is you have so many capital projects that you're completing in the years prior. You're still paying off in fiscal year 17 and 18. And then you've also got debt service payments from Game Farm Road. You start making those payments in fiscal year 17, which I think is $400,000 or $500,000. So that's hit to your budget. But we do have Cannonball Road resurfacing being completed. That was the prior project I talked about. Game Farm Road being completed. We funded the ITEP Downtown Aesthetics Grant, so that's our decorative street lights, that's our streetscape improvements, and then we do have the Kennedy Road multi-use path completed in fiscal year 18. So from a consolidated budget perspective, we are showing deficits too in addition to the general fund, so not great, but hopefully things have turned around in 4 to 5 years that we can turn those into surpluses. So the threshold, though, is the end of fiscal year 17. We talked about this last year where in fiscal year 17 we were definitely going to be in significant financial issues. Now we're showing at the end of fiscal year 17 you're basically going to step foot in fiscal year 18 in significant financial issues. That's going to be short-term borrowing, increased interest costs. That's if all this comes to be exactly as we predicted it. So hopefully we're wrong on a lot of things, namely the revenue projections, and that these never happen. Okay, so now there's some highlights, items to note is what we called them in the budget memo. And these are going to spread across all the different funds, and we'll point these out in the next meeting. Property taxes. This is one of the most talked about things in the city services survey we did. We're still recommending that you increase your operational property taxes each year under the tax cap, but that we continue to roll back the non-abated taxes basically to offset that. So the benefit there is the tax cap is restrictive each year based off of what you levied the previous year. So you're allowing yourself maximum flexibility by being able to levy general fund taxes, use them on whatever we want, as opposed to the non-abated taxes where when we collect $100,000 for a Rob Roy bond, we have to use it to pay off that bond. You can't hire police officers with it, you can't fund roads, you have to pay off that bond. So we do recommend to continue to shift whatever money we have towards the general fund property taxes and away from the non-abated taxes. So what does that look like? Under our new plan, we can actually project property tax decreases. Again, that's going to be just the city tax line item on your tax bill to be reduced each year through fiscal year 18, which is huge. So 3%, 2%, and then 1% each year going forward, but it is a concrete number that's actually negative. So our old plan was we had 4 years of property tax reductions, but we were basically looking at an undetermined increase in fiscal year 18. Could have been 2%, 3%, really depends on the growth at the time. So, I recommend going with the new plan just because, it spreads out basically the savings. It actually forces a little bit the savings towards fiscal year 14 or fiscal year 15, and then you've got it locked in for a longer term too. We do actually propose in this budget to refinance the Library 2005 B bond. We have the ability to do that as a city. That was a bond that was approved by referendum. It raised property taxes. So even with a triple B plus rating, we're looking at about a savings of $50,000 per year, which is pretty good. And so we're recommending to do that in fiscal year 14. So the way that debt service is structured, it does increase each year a little bit. So it's still going to go up 2% per year, 3% per year. That's how the original bond was structured. But it's going to start off from a lower level now, so it'll still save people money. City council goals. Our unanimous goal number 1 was build a fund balance. We've accomplished that at least through fiscal year 17, at least in this budget proposal. We had 2 goal number 2, so I called them goal 2.5. Road improvement maintenance program, we funded it at $1 million per year, which is huge. Even though the road study recommended it at $2 million per year, we had the ability to reanalyze that each year based on funding levels, so that's what we're recommending. Police staffing levels. It's in direct conflict with building your fund balance. You got to figure between the cars, the uniforms, the additional benefits and salary, you're looking at just under $100,000 probably per police officer that you add per year. So we said, take a look at that each year based on your available funds. Make a recommendation to hire more officers. Goals not addressed via funding. It was 3 through I think 10, and there were a lot of them that were tied. They're all listed there. I won't read about. Bond ratings and refinancing. We already talked about the library bond. This kind of plays into our road infrastructure fee. So when S&P reaffirmed our BBB plus rating, remember we had that downgrade in 2008 or 2009. We were hoping to get that upgraded this year. They told us, no, you're still a BBB plus. They said, your financial outlook is a little better than it was, so we upgraded that to stable to positive. Your management practices are better than they used to. But because we didn't get that A rating, it actually cost us about $150,000 in savings on that library 2005 B bond. So for a variety of reasons, which I've already articulated some of them, we do recommend still going forward with it this year. Just capture the low interest rates now. Don't take a chance that interest rates overall are going to go up next year. Even though we've got a triple B plus rating, it's still $570,000 savings over the next 10 years. So, and we are talking about countryside tip financing. Now that we've got a year there, we're generating revenues. We've got a couple years in the back end of that tip bond. We basically can push our bond payments off into the future and then have them paid off by tip funds. And it saves the city money in the short term. Because until we get those revenues, we're making the bond payments off our general fund, which is good. So, but one of the notes in the refinancing, I think we talked about in the audit, was, they said, your general fund doesn't have any money. The water and sewer fund are flush with funds, which is great, but, what if you do need to hire a new police officer? Or if you have to do emergency road repair? How are you going to fund those things? You can't use water funds, you can't use sewer funds, because those are enterprise funds. They have to be used for water and sewer. So that kind of poses a problem. You can't just transfer money, but that solution is the redistribution of the infrastructure fees. So on your bill right now, you've got $8.25 per month per account for water infrastructure. And we talked last year's budget that was $8.25 for sewer infrastructure fee. If you recall, we've got Rockaway bond sewer payments that were being made by Colby up until fiscal year 14. They completely satisfied their agreement. But this year we don't have a new plan because they don't have to make it. So that's a $600,000 hole in our sewer budget as a result of that. So we talked about it last year. To supplement that, we'd have to do $8.25. But we'll get into it here in a second. Again, our water and sewer funds have funds, so why not draw them down? If we do that, jump ahead, I'm sorry. You can't transfer money in. Your general fund was cited for not having cash as a reason for no bond upgrade, and your water and sewer funds have funds, so it's a solution. Well, you decrease the water fee, you decrease the sewer fee, so basically you're running minor deficits in the water and sewer fund each year, still have a lot of money, and then you implement a road infrastructure fee that's positive into the citywide capital fund. So you're freeing up money in your water and sewer fund by not transferring. You're creating new future revenue streams, and at the end of the day, it's actually cheaper for the residents than what we had proposed last year. That ends up being $16 per month per user, and we had proposed $16.50 per month per user. And again, that can be changed each year depending on the council's priorities. So, what are some issues with this? Well, the road infrastructure fee is going to be authorized in the same state statute as the vehicle sticker. So, if you utility bill, we basically make an assumption that every home in the city has a car, every business generates traffic. So each utility bill account, regardless of how many cars you have in your house or how much traffic you generate in the business, is equally responsible for all the road maintenance in the city. So we can rescind that on a resident's utility bill account. If you sign an affidavit stating you don't have any vehicles in your house, the police can go out there and check, or a code enforcement officer can go out there and check. You might be able to cross-reference it against some databases. Really minimal work on our part, and then the fee can be removed. So is it better than a vehicle sticker? I think so. You don't have any mailings, you don't have the cost of stickers. Residents don't have to come to City Hall, they don't have to waste their time, looking for the piece of mail, bringing it in here, paying for it, getting the sticker, putting it on their car, and then there's less burden on the police department. So to me, that seems like a better, or at least a more efficient solution. So, the comment is, well, it's another fee, it's on the utility bill. Your base utility bill is going to go up. Well, yes, but without it, you can't fund the Road to Better Roads program. So I talked about in the budget memo, for every dollar we don't spend on road infrastructure, below $2 million per year, we're falling farther and farther behind on road infrastructure. If you remember the little graph that Brad gave us, there comes a point where it's actually a lot more efficient to spend money than it is to wait maybe 10 years and then the road completely deteriorates and you have to redo it. So, the more money we spend now, hopefully will save us money in the long run, and then, we can get moving in the right direction and then, spend less in the long term. So, again, it's a little cheaper than what we proposed last year. It's 50 cents per month per user. And it does put money into the general fund, which gets us in a good position for a bond upgrade. So, if our general fund is flush with cash, we get a bond upgrade, we can go to refinance most of our bonds, hopefully package them together, draw out the term if we want to, capture lower interest rates, and then save everybody money in the long run. And then on the other side too, we did go through and we did electrical aggregation, $30 per month per home, and then we did garbage contracts. So, the residents aren't better off even with this road infrastructure fee this year than they were 2 years ago before we did these things. So, the goal is obviously to get it moving in the right direction so that all these costs are lower in the future. So, it's just right now we're saying, well, it's kind of uptick for a little while, and then hopefully, it goes down in the long run. So, raises in health insurance, we budget for a 2% net increase for each employee. But also what we've got in here is just leaving fiscal year 15 and beyond kind of open. We don't know what's going to happen with the city's budget. We're just not to the point where I can say, we should be budgeting 3% per year or 4% per year. Just reanalyzing each year. But we are proposing to move health insurance costs up to 12 and 15%. Employees right now are paying anywhere from 7.5% to 10.5%. And what I'm trying to do is actually create sort of a second tier so that when new employees come in, they're paying a higher amount. They know it before they get recruited here. They can choose not to accept employment if they don't want to pay those higher interest rates. And so then to offset that increase, the current employees would actually receive a supplemental salary increase to offset that move. So there would be no net impact to the employees. And then we could also have a compensation package that's a lot closer to the private sector, which in my mind is a good thing. It seems like all of the public sector salary analyses I'm seeing, people are starting to factor in private sector compensation into it so that, when you have people that work in the private sector, they can look at our salaries and our benefits and say, yeah, they're making similar to what we'd be making in the public sector, or in the private sector. So, again, there's no net impact for the employees. So, we hope that they'll see that and that you'll understand that and see that as a good thing and then move forward on it. So, other items to note, we talked about fund closures. We closed out the municipal building impact fee fund for the auditor's recommendation. The rec center, we're leaving it, so we have to close it. Cuts in services, we talked about leaf pickup. The thing with leaf pickup, when we talked about it, I think 2 or 3 years ago, is the majority of the residents don't use the service right now. They have young trees, they don't produce many leaves, and so we actually have a duplicate service provided by Advanced Disposal. Anybody can bag their own leaves, put them at the curb, and Advanced Disposal, which is Veolia, will pick them up for free through November 30th. So it's a lot easier in our public works department. Those guys can be freed up to go do other things, and the service is still provided. It's a little bit less convenient, but it's a cost savings to the city overall. for it, and that way the cost is equitably distributed between city residents and non-city residents. Right now, if you live in the city, you're paying as a county resident, you're paying as a city resident. So, our thought would be that we'd be able to basically cut the service and the county would pick it up and then distribute the cost among county residents, or all county residents. And then the senior garbage subsidy. So the way that we proposed it is a third rollback in fiscal year 14, another third next year, and then it's cut entirely in fiscal year 16. So that would just manifest itself on the bill. Instead of it being a $20 charge next year or a $1 charge, it would be an $8 charge. The next year it would be 16. The next year it would be about $24, depending on what the cost is of the contract. Minor things, we didn't fund the International Council of Shopping Centers participation. We talked about that during our goal setting session, that we wanted to go out there and make sure that they knew that we had a lot of commercial property that was vacant. There was a lot of opportunity. And we also did not fund City Hall renovations. Other items to note, still cheaper to have EDI perform our engineering services than it is to do in-house. The calculations are on the board there. Vehicle replacement schedule. We did fund police squad cars at 3 cars per year. We talked about this last year. Basically, when the squad car gets beyond 60,000 miles, it costs us more to maintain it than it would be to just trade it in at about a $10,000 or $12,000 trade value and buy a new car at $20,000 than it is to drive into the ground at $120,000 or 120,000 miles. Have downtime, have maintenance costs. It just makes sense to do that from a financial perspective. Public Works, there's no clean replacement schedule for them because the costs are, the trucks are so expensive up front. But we did budget a street department, water and sewer truck each year of 14 and 15 going forward. I'm going to jump back here. I think I'm going to miss a slide actually. So there's kind of just a new analysis we included in the budget. And it's cost of services and what you're actually paying for is these individual services. Jeff and I actually came up with 2 different methodologies to talk about this. So you pay property taxes to the city. Property taxes are about 17% of our overall budget. Okay? So we took that and we said, every service we provide, 17% of that service is paid for by property taxes. Okay? And then further, we said, well, a portion of your property taxes go to pay for every service. So we did the math, and so methodology 1 would be, when you pay your property tax bill, how much do you actually pay towards those services if they were all included in the general fund? Now, we included things like hometown days, the rec centers on there, just for comparison purposes. Those aren't actually funded by general fund dollars directly, but it gives you an idea of how expensive or inexpensive something is for you in your property taxes. The second methodology, which is the high end of it, is how much of the service are you actually paying for. So if you own a house, it's a certain amount of money. There's other people that own houses in the city. Their houses have value too. So you have a proportionate share of everything that we do just by owning a house in Yorkville. So we said, yeah, that's a little bit on the high end, but it gives you a high end. So Kendall Area Transit, for instance, if we were to continue to fund that in the future, you're paying for about $1.73 of that. Each person is in your property taxes, and your proportionate share is $6.67. So you can pay for that by property taxes, income taxes if you have a job, sales taxes if you buy things in Yorkville, and other taxes and fees if you get pulled over, speeding tickets are revenues. So that's the high end of it. We just thought that was interesting to kind of show on a spectrum there. Okay, so the last 2 sections of our items to note were things to watch and then future obligations. So this was kind of the list of everything that we knew that we weren't funding in last year's budget proposal. So we're going back and we're trying to make sure that we recover them, or if we haven't covered them, why we haven't. Raises we talked about, 2% raises in fiscal year 14. We still don't have a plan going forward, obviously. Vehicle replacement we did. Countryside tip we talked about. Last year we didn't know that there was going to be development there. So, which is great. We've got a movie theater coming in, and we've got the proposal to refinance the TIF debt. We talked about the Rob Roy sewer revenue shortfall. Again, we're making that up with lower sewer infrastructure fee and then proposing the road infrastructure fee in its place. Pro-build closure, we talked about that last year as being a potential major drag on sales taxes. It didn't register in fiscal year 13. Our sales tax numbers were almost exactly what they were in fiscal year 12, but we're starting to see a tail in fiscal year 14. Whether that's due to pro-build or not, tough to say. Build program, it did work, we extended it, so things are pretty good there. We talked about conservative revenue estimates. We were purposefully trying to underestimate our revenues so that things would grow and we weren't counting on future growth. They've been conservative, so it did exactly what we wanted to. And then we kind of had last year, I don't know if you remember this, in February and March we were staring at some major unknowns in our budget for fiscal year 12. We didn't know that we were going to have, I think, a $1.5 million general fund surplus. We thought that it could have been like less than half of that. So we had health insurance costs, those came in lower. The pro-build closure didn't touch us. Non-home rule sales taxes are coming in at $1.8 million per year. We had budgeted for about $1.2 million. And then our fiscal year 12 budget overall was just much better than we expected. Department costs were down, so we had 4 targets to hit for fiscal year 12 to hit all of them. So it was great from a financial perspective to see those numbers. Engineering inspections, that was something off into the future that we were worried about. Remember, developers, when they platted a subdivision, prepaid inspection costs to us 7 or 8 years ago, and they basically get inspection fees for free in perpetuity until they complete the subdivision. So we had foreseen that as being an issue because now we have to pay EI to go out there and do the inspections. But our estimates have been right on. It's about $30,000 per year. I don't really see it being much of an issue going forward. We have so many subdivisions that are in various stages of issues that whenever somebody comes to us and they actually want to build on the property, they're going to have to go through an annexation agreement amendment anyway. So this is something that we can wrap into the entire annexation agreement amendment and say, you're not getting this in the future. You either have to pay again or you've got to complete it in a year. So hopefully those things won't impact us. Road maintenance, this is on the future obligations. We funded that. Route 34 and Sycamore Road traffic signal, we didn't fund. The debate for this one's a little wild. The eastern section of Route 34 is actually going to be done in the next 5 years. So when that happens, there are a couple intersections along that stretch that have traffic signal equipment that would actually fit our Sycamore Road and Route 34 intersection fit. So when the state takes that equipment down, they can't reuse it elsewhere. So they will actually sell it to municipalities at a cheap rate. We can go and install it for a fraction of the cost of the new one. So we're kind of hoping that that's going to happen here, so that's why we didn't fund it. Beecher Center HVAC, we didn't touch that this year. Recapture in Fox Hill, we didn't do that. Water main replacements, there were 7 of them, if you recall, of various costs and age. We didn't fund it, but what we're going to talk about actually this one from Public Works is when we go through do our Road to Better Roads programs, we actually select the roads. There are water and sewer lines beneath almost all of those roads, so we might actually select those roads to be improved based on whether there are water and sewer lines below to be done. So we said hold off on recommending any of these replacements until we integrate that into our Road to Better Roads selection. Well, 7 backup, we didn't touch that. Some sewer system upgrades, we did not fund those. Replacements, same way. Crystal Bay intersection improvements, if you recall, we're responsible for Galena Road and Route 47 intersection improvements. The Crystal Bay, the Rosenwood Drive extension up to 47, and then I think it's Route 30, actually, Route 47 intersection improvements. We did an annexation agreement trade. So the thought behind those, obviously, is that we'll have a commercial property in front of Crystal Bay develop at some point in the future, and that developer would then be responsible for this. So that's why we didn't fund them. Center Park, we talked about last year that it might have to be the equipment would have to be completely torn out in fiscal year 13 and fiscal year 14. I have not actually seen an update from our park superintendent or director as to if there's an upgraded timeline, but we did not fund it either. So, and then finally, we had the Kennedy Road Bike Trail on there, which is from the fundraising. Okay, so that wraps up tonight's individual discussions. I can take questions if you'd like after this. Next meeting, again, we're going to be going into each one of the individual funds. My goal is to highlight all the things funds that we can see it visually. And then again, our budget schedule is there. So we still have a public hearing, a formal opportunity for everybody to talk about, or for the residents to talk about what we propose. And then we've got at least 3 meetings to debate and potentially approve them. So, thank you.
And you're going to be posting this on our webpage?
Yes.
So yeah, that's a big picture. You all look at it, wrap your heads around it. Next meeting, we'll talk about some of the smaller picture stuff. And we've got at least 4 meetings to debate and see what we want to do. Do you have any additional business tonight? Yes, sir.
Yeah, just, and direct this to Bart, actually. The downtown railroad tracks, everybody knows they're getting horrible, especially northbound. Is there a schedule for those to be worked on?
I believe those go along with the Route 47 project. They are not still probably the paving portion of the south side. So in the spring, they're going to do a storm sewer, but we can also ask them to do temporary cold patching in the spring when they go through with the storm sewer.
The sooner the better, because they're just horrible getting over them. And they're only getting worse.
Anything else? I have a few items. This Thursday, I've been invited to a meeting for stakeholders in the Prairie Parkway funding, money that's left over from the Prairie Parkway. As most everyone knows, the Parkway was funded, I think, from 34 to 71, about $200 million was allocated. And since the Parkway's been put on the back burner, that money has been, some of it has been reallocated to Grundy County and the section from Caton Farm Road down to I-80, approximately $80 million. So that kind of started a little uproar with some Kendall County folks and even Kane County folks thinking that the money should still be allocated in Kendall County. So Tom Cross agreed to hold a meeting with all the stakeholders. We have representatives from Randy Hopeland's office. Kay Hatcher will be there, Pam Roth, Tom Cross, obviously. There'll be the 2 county board chairmen, Chris Lawson and John Shaw. And then the mayors, me, Shawn Michaels, I think Brian from Oswego will be there. I got representatives, so there's going to be a lot of people there to talk about this. My position, and I think Yorkville's official position, is that it's ludicrous to spend $80 million down in Grundy and southern Kendall County, where the traffic counts don't justify spending $80 million. I mean, we looked at traffic counts, crash data, future traffic projections, and where you get the most bang for the buck, obviously, is where they're ending the northern section going through Yorkville right now. So we're down Kennedy Road up to like Cross Street and Sugar Grove. So that's my position. It's a position I'm going to argue on Thursday. I just wanted to inform everyone here to see if anyone had any different thoughts on what Yorkville's priorities should be.
I agree 100%. Agree. Absolutely.
I know a lot of our county board members feel the same way. We read in the paper, I think our chairman actually believes that the farmers kind of need 47 widened down in the southern section. I don't see it, but so I'm sure we'll have a good discussion on Thursday, Valentine's Day, and I will report back afterwards. Yes?
I think that maybe you should have a little time on spy like Shawn Michaels did today. It was a good interview, but I think we need to be on there talking about how important it is for our city.
When I was driving to work this morning, I heard the airtime that Mr. Shawn Michaels had, and I want to pull over and call Ryan Morton to see how Shawn got all that airtime. Well, he's been fighting for that interchange up there.
Right.
And all it is about $8 million. I mean, I think the toll authority pledged like $12 million. It's a $20 million project. So I mean, my position is after the section that I just talked about, I think our second priority from a regional perspective is the interchange up on 47 North. I mean, for $8 million, I'm sure they can find the money out of the $130 million or so that's left, you know, but this IDOT project down in the southern portion, I don't know if IDOT has new management, but that project moved at light speed as far as IDOT goes, you know. I've never seen anything move so quickly as far as IDOT projects, but.
And in Illinois, when something moves quickly, you have to question it.
So, anyway, like I said, I will report back on that. The other item of note is 4th of July celebration. I know there's been some press on it for the last couple of months, and there's a meeting held in early January. Well, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Just to give you a little background, for the last 50 some odd years, it's been sponsored by the Firemen's Association, which is not the fire district, but it was a group of firemen who actually did it on their own time. It was a separate organization in the fire district. And they did a great job for 50 some odd years. It's no cost to residents. They have all the games for kids, activities for kids, had the parade and the fireworks at night. Well, all that's coming to an end. I mean, the Firemen's Association has disbanded. Years ago, we were a volunteer fire department, so it kind of made sense for a hometown, you know, gathering on the 4th of July. They just chipped in and did it. Well, now with paid firemen, you know, most of them live outside of the area, you know, so it's just not what it was at one time. So they have been looking for someone to take it over. They had been meeting in early January, very sparsely attended meeting. I was there, Tim Evans from Parks and Rec was there, representative from Raging Waves, and a few other concerned groups were there, but not a whole lot of people. I'd say 15 people. You know, and then we advertised again. We held another meeting at the end of January, and much bigger turnout. A lot of groups came out, people from Chapel on the Green, several church organizations, Masons. I mean, a lot of groups came out, and they all want to help. They all want to do something. Nobody wants to see this thing die. So everyone wants to do something. The thing they were lacking was someone willing to take the bull by the horns and show some leadership and kind of delegate responsibilities and this and that. So Tim Evans stepped up, not as a city employee, because nobody really wants to see this turn into a city event. We want it to remain a community event. But Tim offered to lead the charge, kind of on his own time, and you know, just get the ball rolling. The ultimate goal is to form a 501c3 charitable organization to overtake this and you know, keep it kind of as it is, you know, that nice hometown feel celebration. So we had another meeting just today, and you know, it was kind of realized that there's not enough time between now and the 4th of July to set up this 501c3 in time for the 4th of July. So it's been suggested, and we talked with Bart to talk to Tim about just this year, kind of putting it under the city's umbrella until they can get their act together and get their 501c3. Because the biggest problem is liability insurance. The insurance always fell under the fireman's district insurance, you know. Without having a government agency or a big corporation or someone to provide an umbrella of insurance, it's just not going to happen. So there'd be another event kind of like Holiday Under the Stars, you know, that just falls under the city's umbrella. And that's kind of what I'm bringing here tonight, to see if anyone has any objections for this year only to kind of put it under the city's umbrella.
Was there an additional cost to the city or anything of that nature?
I don't think so. I mean, we're going to run past the insurance company, but I don't think so. The Firemen's Association or the fire district put it as a rider on their insurance. Our insurance, do we include hometown news already? And
yeah, it's already in the city's general insurance policy. So same with the Holiday Under the Stars one. And if we did, I mean, I would think the cost would be relatively minimal just to add as a rider. So most of the fireworks companies will actually, you know, kind of offer to cover that.
Now, as far as funding, the Firemen's Association still has about $11,000 that they feel belongs to the community. So that is going to go right towards fireworks. If we didn't do anything else, they said they would do one more fireworks show. They'd be a couple $1,000s short still, but they'd find a way to find that between now and then. But as it goes, they're going to put that towards the fireworks, and New Life Church stepped up and offered to sponsor the kiddie rides with a monetary donation. We got a call this week from the group who raised funds for the old jail. There was still about $6,000 in their account, and they offered, well, it hasn't been official yet, they want to reach out to every committee member, but they offered to use that $6,000 towards the celebration this year. So a lot of progress is made in just these 3 meetings. A lot of progress happened tonight. But there still will be a concentrated fundraising effort to fund this all from community donations and whatever churches or whoever else wants to donate. So that's where it stands right now, and if there's no objection, that's kind of the route that we're going. I mean, the city's going to help them get on their feet this spring, and it will take over the same way Hometown Days operated for years, you know, with a private committee doing it. Okay, and I will keep everyone updated. I've been going to all the meetings. I will continue to go to the meetings, but I just think that this celebration is just very important to the city. Citizens Police Academy stepped up to help with the parade. Junior Women's Club. I mean, there's so many organizations that offer help, and I can't remember them all off the top of my head. But it's really heartening to see how many people come out just to support this celebration. I think that's all I have. I was going to thank Laura Schra, who's not here, for her work in our ITEP grant. Y'all seen that we received a grant of $451,000 for downtown streetscape improvements. So we'll discuss that. And then the budget proposal as we go further. Bart did put it in the budget just so you see what the budgets look like. We had $300,000 in there. So I'll thank Laura next time. That is all I have for additional business. No executive session. Do we have any other citizen comments on non-agenda items?
My name is Joel Frieders. I live in Whispering Meadows over here off Cannonball, which I'm excited to actually. Thanks. Thanks. I previously mentioned the fact that I spend very little money on food in Yorkville. I drive over now every weekend to stores outside of Yorkville just to kind of buy things that are better for me and my kids and my wife. A really quick little background. I was raised around drugs. In fact, for the majority of my life, I've sold drugs on a street corner with my family. I run a compounding pharmacy in the road. I'm not being facetious. I've never been too far away from the sideshore pornography, also known as the American healthcare system. My dad was one of the first pharmacists in the country to refuse to sell the birth control pill back when I was a kid. And I remember people hating and attacking me for it. He had an opinion based on his professional education in pharmacy, and it was rooted in his own personal morals, of course. And thankfully, this is still a country where you can have an opinion. He also chose not to sell tobacco. Nobody faulted him for that. That might have been the first time in my life where I remember someone standing up for something so dramatically. But it wasn't that preachy, you're all going to go to hell kind of stuff when you really asked him why. Part of the main reason he was so against slanging birth control pills is because he felt partly afraid of it. There was no evidence that it'd be safe in the long run, and we all know drugs just don't go into your body and disappear. You take them, you pee them out, and they go into my drinking water. It wasn't that he was pro-life or pro-choice, that he had a professional opinion based on certain facts that no one really wanted to talk about. So over time, my dad, now my boss, came to the current conclusion that he couldn't in good faith advocate the use of drugs, making a living dispensing to people who probably didn't need them in the first place. So I hear every day, too many people take too many drugs, over and over and over again. In case you're wondering, it is incredibly difficult to make a living advocating that someone not purchase a drug from a guy who makes his living selling drugs, if you're the guy who makes his living selling drugs. 16 years later, my pharmacy business model stands to prove that I advocate people try every other option before resorting to drugs that are potentially and not unnecessarily dangerous. The main ingredient to this is food. Making my living out of helping people have a life worth living is part of me now, and I realize that. But from where I'm standing, I don't think that many people really understand how to take care of themselves. There is no nutrition education requirement to get out of junior high. The food pyramid is massively outdated and incorrect, and it's probably the only thing besides a poor sex education class that I can remember from high school health education. People aren't taught good food habits from their parents anymore because their parents didn't have a good nutrition education either. We are so strung out on the things that being inconvenient for us that we routinely choose easy over worthwhile. We allow the food we eat to be made of crap that is not in any way close to being actual food, which is flavored to make it palatable, using chemicals to make them addicting, and we can't even begin to understand their impact on not just our bodies, but our entire race. I commented a few months ago about how frustrated I was with my access to healthy food, and I still am, but I don't think I'm as frantic about it any longer, because I know where to store my non-chemically raped food, which is mainly outside of Yorkville. But the people that are squeezing by me at the grocery store are constantly making horrible food decisions, and how they react to the food is anyone's guess. A sensitivity or an allergy to gluten or celiac is not uncommon. I wager that a majority of the people who have a reaction to gluten just accept it as a part of life. Stomach upset, diarrhea, vomiting, headache, swelling, sweating, literally feeling there are spiders all over your skin. These are all side effects of having a sensitivity to gluten. If you allow those things to keep happening to you just because Taco Bell's line is shorter than cooking your own meal with ingredients that you trust, you're nearly guaranteeing that an acute symptom will become chronic. Putting forth the energy and personal investment it takes to not just make yourself feel like crap anymore is beyond people now. A pill is easier than a juice fast, a box of hamburger helper is quicker than a pan-seared tuna steak, and I get that. But as someone who is possibly going to be sitting where you are, I don't think we can afford to let people go on as they have been regarding the food they eat anymore, at least not in the city where I live. Perhaps some of the people in Yorkville have felt like me when I felt limited in my food options. I saw eating healthier as me accepting that the food I'm about to pay for might taste like a pile of grass. But it doesn't have to be. Eating healthy is not simple today. It's actually extremely flippant and confusing. We have a few dozen choices for restaurants and a small handful of sources for raw and fresh organic produce, and of course your run-of-the-mill processed foods. But it feels like we're all focused on the personal financial costs. The actual food has lost its focus as being the reason why you go anywhere. It's cheap, go here. It's cheaper, go there. What if I'm aware that quality costs money and I still want to eat something I didn't prepare myself? What if I'm late leaving the pharmacy and eat dinner for my kids? I should be able to provide food to them that isn't going to give one diarrhea, another a rash on her neck, another a headache from hell, bloating and swelling on my wife's face, or me. Right now, we, my family, have that luxury, but many of us don't know how to find it because we aren't making it painfully obvious how completely necessary it is for every food provider to give you the option to eat healthier. And if they can't, so what? At least be forthcoming about it. Dairy Queen's not going to give me a kale smoothie, and I'm cool with that. But let's be upfront about it. We need to accept the fact that making and eating food is easy, and it's way too easy. But why is it so damn hard for me to eat in the same places that you eat? Just because my kid is sensitive to things that this particular restaurant uses in every plate of food it serves. What if we lived in a city that asked the restaurants to lead the charge in educating people on what they're eating? What if we created a way of allowing our food providers to brag up their options for people like me who refuse to eat crap food? What if we started a dialogue on where the food they're serving us comes from? What if we considered every seller of food in our city responsible for at least communicating with the residents of our city about what they can offer us as far as healthier meal options, grass-fed or range-fed meats, local organic produce, or something free of white flour? Society has accepted that some people live their lives without eating meat, and vegetarians have choices in every restaurant. But those who can't eat dairy without a follow-up case of the green apple quick steps, that's diarrhea, didn't know, or those with gluten allergies, or those who know that eating anything with white flour is the same as eating sugar, and if they eat that piece of bread that has a little bit of sugar in it, they're going to suffer a migraine that will keep them in bed for a week. These people are left to their own devices right now. Why do these people that have sensitivities in the first place? Crap food. Why are two of my best friends currently undergoing deadly chemotherapy right now if genetics and obesity can already be ruled out? Crap food. Why are we the fattest country in the history of history? Crap food. Regular people eating crap food can't be as active in society as the rest of the people who aren't eating the crap food, because the people eating the crap food can only eat the crap food because they don't know what any of their options so instantly fulfilling as crap food when they were never made aware of how awesome food can be, sans crap. I know I'm not the only person who feels this way, but maybe I'm the only person thinking about how all of our other problems might be better handled if our bodies and minds weren't being stressed to the limit by trying to survive on crap food. Every small business owner or food provider makes risky decisions on a regular basis, but the simple addition of 1 or 2 or 3 items to their shopping list, such as coconut oil, almond flour, and sweet potatoes, and keeping that sugar out of my sauces and my bread, is not a choice that will put them out of business. We need to stick up for the people trying to stay out of the hospital and the doctor's office. And that means asking the people who sell the food in our city to give those people some options that are just as readily available as those French fries and that amazingly delicious ranch dressing. My freedoms in this country are pretty vast, and I am thankful, but I am currently locked into spending my money elsewhere because we're too rural to understand eating better and getting off the couch and not swallowing pills for our quote-unquote high cholesterol. I need better food options. I don't just want them. I need better food options. I demand better food options, and sure, you're just the city council of little old Yorkville, Illinois, but hell, lead by example and step into the arena of shooting for a healthier community. Some of you cried and moaned and are still talking about the closing of the rec center. Well, the rec center does nothing if we're eating crap food. There is no benefit to one without the other. I promise you a healthier and happier community does not start with lower property taxes. It starts with that healthier community that's out from under that fog of crap food that affects every decision that we make. This isn't an initiative that should cost much more than time for the city or even 1 or 2 appointed volunteer food psychopaths waiting. The restaurants can keep going on with businesses as usual. It's just they add or remove individual ingredients to allow some people with a food issue an option they didn't have before. If they can't bend to serve more people, so be it. The important part of my discussion is that the restaurants provide this information willingly and voluntarily. Seriously, 5 options are needed everywhere. Vegetarian, which are already everywhere. Vegan, which is no animal products. Paleo, which is kind of what I've been going through recently, which is no dairy, no sugar, no starch, no grains, no legumes. Nothing in the box. Gluten-free with no grains. A couple of my kids have shown signs of celiac. We're not totally sure if it's the actual reason why certain things are happening, but when they don't eat gluten, they're not punks. So if their behavior is any indication, not eating crap food actually makes them better kids, which actually makes me a better dad. And then, of course, the 5th option is the good old-fashioned crap food, which I love just as much as everybody else. I deserve the right to eat like crap just like everyone else, but I can't keep letting the opportunity to start the dialogue between food eater and food creator remain limited by a predetermined menu with the same old crap ingredients. I want to spend my money in Yorkville. If you do nothing, I'll be back to annoy you every few weeks until you give me what the hell I want.
Thank you. Do you have any other citizen comment? Okay, meeting adjourned.